We just got some more news about EA Sports College Football 25. We're going to talk mostly gameplay today, and we also have a little bit of information on some game mode stuff. And please excuse my audio if it doesn't sound as good as normal. I am on a vacation right now, but this news dropped, and I thought some news might drop, so I did want to bring my travel equipment with me just in case so I can get you guys updated as quick as possible. But if it sounds a little bit janky and not as crisp as usual, that's why. This is somewhat of a leak. This isn't straight from EA, but EA is going to be releasing a ton of more information in the coming weeks as we lead up to the release of the game in July. They're going to be going over gameplay and modes in depth over the next few weeks, so make sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon on so you don't miss any of those important videos when they drop. Trying to get to 600k subs before the release of this game, so if everybody watching just subscribed, we could literally hit that number in a few days. Now, the news today for EA Sports College Football 25 is coming from none other than Mike Straw. Now, if you've been around my channel for some time now, you've heard me talk about him before. He's always a credible source when it comes to usually Madden-related leaks, but now that EA Sports College Football is another game being made by EA, he's got some connections on that side of the development as well, and he brought us some really important information today. Now, keep in mind, this guy has always been right, at least as far back as I can remember. If he says something about the game, it's legit, it's in the game. He was the one that leaked the passing system for Madden 23 a few years ago, for example. Now, this might kind of go without saying a little bit, but he did say that there's going to be a heavy emphasis on the option in this game. And obviously it's a college football game, so that should be a thing, but he said that there are lots of new animations for the options, for the pitches that look great. He also mentioned that teams that run the option predominantly will be better at it, they'll be faster at it. He said that a real focus for this game is making it a faster paced game, much like real life. It's going to noticeably be faster than Madden, but especially when it comes to the different options and the pitches and all the different trickery, the triple options and the motions, you're going to notice this is going to be faster, and especially from the teams that are built to run this, you're going to notice that difference, and it's going to be a little bit harder to stop versus a team that maybe doesn't run it that often. He said you're going to immediately feel the quickness in the way that the O-line blocks and the ways that the QBs and the running backs react. There's going to be, I guess, a lot more urgency when you're running the option plays because things do happen so quickly on those types of plays. He also mentioned that there's going to be a lot of unique playbooks with a bunch of different plays and formations that we haven't seen in Madden and that won't be in Madden because college offenses are a lot crazier than NFL offenses. Moving on, the next thing that he touched on was the difference in 5-star players versus the lower level players. So he said that you will notice a difference between a 5-star athlete and a 2-star athlete on the field. He also said that the powerhouse teams will noticeably be harder to beat. You'll be able to tell that they have more of those 4- and 5-star recruits. What he said was, supposedly from what he was hearing from his source at EA, he said that 5-star players will react and move differently than 2-star players. They'll be able to maybe get certain animations, let's say, for example, this is just me assuming here, they'll be able to get some different animations maybe than the lower level players. And this is something that I think Madden has not ever really done a great job with. Sure, you notice a difference between a 95 and a 75, but not to the extent that it should be, especially when you consider wide receiver and DB matchups. The lower rated cornerbacks on a lot of plays will still keep up with those high-end route runners, and I don't think we're going to see that in this game. I think if you've got a 4-star or a 5-star receiver lined up on a 2-star cornerback, you're going to notice the mismatch, and he's probably going to abuse him. He's probably going to be able to get some crazier animations on him that the DB might just have a really tough time going against. And of course, we'll know more about this as EA breaks it down further in the coming weeks, but I do think this is something we should notice and we should want to see out of the game, because when you're building up those lower level teams, you want it to be a challenge when you go up against these harder teams. You want your 2- and 3-star players to not look like 5-star players on the field, otherwise what's the point? Moving on, he said that this game will have plenty of new animations that are specific to only college. He said that even though the game is on the same engine as Madden, that they have done everything they can to make it feel as unique and different as possible from Madden. He said that there will be certain animations that are also allowed here that maybe might not be allowed in Madden because EA has to, and I quote, make Big Daddy NFL happy, which we all know that. Now, he didn't say specifically what this meant, but an example that I came up with here, and again, we don't know that this is the exact thing that's in the game, but an example would be in Madden, the helmets cannot pop off of players anymore, or certain big hits aren't allowed the same way they were in older games because the NFL does not like that. However, in this game, potentially maybe we could see helmets getting knocked off because they don't have that bigger entity to really answer to. And he said, although they're going to share a lot of these same animations, you're going to see a lot of different ones here. He said there are hundreds and hundreds of different animations in this game that are not in Madden and that some you won't see in Madden. You're going to have a lot of 1 foot inbounds catch animations, for example. You're going to have a lot of different animations with different option style offenses. But even aside from that, I do think they're going to try to make this game as unique as possible. That's what they told him, at least. So there's probably going to be even maybe some different tackle animations in there. Yes, they're going to have same ones that you see in Madden as well. They're not just going to do away with those, but they're going to add more onto it to try to make this game feel as different as possible. And he said from everybody that he has talked to at EA, and of course we have to wait and see to really know, but he said the game definitely feels different than Madden. While it has its similarities, it's going to feel unique and not an exact copy and paste with just college teams. He also went on to talk about the wear and tear system that is going to be one of the bigger focuses for gameplay this year. And he said you're going to have to manage your players or they will not perform up to their ability. He said this will be more noticeable for longer quarter games and sim games rather than online play where the quarters are much shorter. So this is going to be a bigger deal for like dynasty mode players. Now, an example he gave was that if you have a backup running back early in the game who breaks off a 75-yard touchdown and then you try to just kind of overuse them and just turn him into a workhorse despite the fact that that's not his typical workload, you're going to notice how he wears down quicker due to a variety of factors, such as maybe his stamina not being as good as a workhorse back or him just not used to taking the amount of hits on his body. You know, if he's a guy that gets 7-8 carries a game and now you're giving him 20, he's going to wear down quicker. And there's going to be, I'm sure, a bunch of other ways that this is going to be implemented as well, but that was just one example he gave. He said there's going to be more ways to substitute because of this, and you're going to have to really be on top of that in this game so that your players aren't just wearing down and you're not abusing guys too much. Now, in terms of game modes, he said he couldn't really talk too much specifically about game modes just yet because his source does not want him revealing a lot of stuff yet, but he did touch on a couple of things. He said that a lot of effort went into those modes like Dynasty and Road to Glory, and he said that EA is banking on these modes having a lot of replay value, and he specifically mentions Road to Glory that there's going to be a lot of off-the-field stuff to do. He said a lot of effort has been put into the off-season of these modes. He also said recruiting will supposedly be deeper than the older games. Now, in which ways, he said he didn't know. He just said it will be deeper, and I think really that's just going to mostly be because of NIL and the transfer portal. That's going to be, you know, a thing that we didn't really have in the old games. We didn't have NIL, and transferring was not nearly what it's going to be in this game. So those are two really big examples of how it's probably going to be deeper. But he said that they know what the community wants with this game, and they brought in a lot of people from the community, people from the revamp team and stuff like that, people from the modding team, I believe, even. So he said they know what the community wants with this game, and they're not going to let them down. He said this is a full-fledged release. This is not a game that they're pushing out there as like a starting point or a foundation game where things are going to be a little shallow but be built up with the years to come. He said that's not how they're approaching it, and that's not how they're selling it. They're selling this as this is a fully fledged game. Obviously, they're going to keep building on it because it's going to be a yearly release. They're going to keep adding things. He said maybe not every little single detail that you wanted is going to be in this release, but the game is not going to feel shallow. It's not going to feel like a watered down version of the older games. It's going to feel like a fully fledged release with a lot of replay value. He did also go on to talk about crossplay for Online Dynasty. He said it will be coming. It's probably not going to happen this year, but he said that the focus for EA was to get the gameplay right and to get the modes right above everything else. And he said, look, I know a lot of people, when it comes to gameplay, especially with EA, and even some of the modes, he said, you know, people have been burned in the past or people don't fully trust EA. And he said, you know, I can't completely blame you on that, but he said that's what their focus was for this game. And he said that they also want to make sure that crossplay is going to work properly in the other modes that it's in first before they just throw it into Dynasty, because really with this game, the last thing you want to see is crossplay having some type of crazy bug and then it just messes up Online Dynasty, because if that happens, then that's going to really hurt this game very badly. So we have good Dynasty, we have Online Dynasty, but you just can't crossplay as of right now, but it is something that's going to come probably sooner rather than later. He also mentioned that this game is going to feature a lot of equipment that won't be in Madden. He said some of it he does anticipate will carry over, but as we've talked about before on this channel, the NFL has a lot of strict guidelines when it comes to the uniform policy. So if it's something that goes against the uniform policy, they're likely not going to let it in Madden, at least in the, you know, regular team version of Madden. Maybe if you're playing in the yard or something like that, like the more crazier game modes, I guess you could call them, that's different. But in terms of real teams on the field, they're not going to let equipment that goes against the uniform policy. But he said there will be a lot, that's what he said, a lot of equipment in this game that's not in Madden. Some of it will carry over the stuff that's allowed, but you're going to see the stuff that isn't allowed be in this game. And another tidbit that he dropped that was interesting, he said that from what he understands, there is no ESPN license for the game. He said, but the issue with that for EA was that if the ESPN license is in the game, ESPN will have say over how they're presented in the game, similar to how the NFL has say on how they're presented in Madden, and they didn't kind of want to deal with that. They want to do it the way they want to do it. They don't want to have to answer to another corporation, and I think that is an important thing with this game. The less people EA has to answer to, the more creative they can get with things. Now, he did also say later in the video that last time the deal was up for renewal, ESPN didn't agree with a new deal with EA anyway. If I heard him right, that's what he said. So it could just be a matter of also ESPN just not agreeing to, you know, whatever amount of money EA is offering them. It could be, you know, a business related thing. But he said that obviously you're still going to have the ESPN commentators. They have the rights to the likeness of the ESPN commentators, but you're just basically, you're not going to see the ESPN logo on the scoreboard, which to me isn't the biggest deal in the world. As long as the presentation is good, I don't personally need the letters of ESPN on the screen to make it feel special, as long as the actual presentation itself is good. And the last thing he kind of ended on, which is really important, is he said that this is the truly first current gen football game from EA. Current gen meaning the PS5 and the Xbox Series X/S, only the latest consoles. Now, some people still refer to that as next gen, but it's current gen now. You know, it's been out for a few years now, and he said this is the first truly current gen game where it's only going to be on those systems. Madden still comes out on last gen, and I believe Madden 25 is also still going to be releasing on last gen, and he said that does kind of hold it back a little bit. He said this game, there was never any thought of it being on those consoles, and with that in mind, they're able to really push the boundaries of the systems. They're able to do some things that maybe they can't completely do with Madden, even though the current gen version of Madden does have a lot of differences at this point than last gen's version. When you still have to consider last gen, number one, that takes development time and hours and resources, even though it is kind of mostly copy and pasted at this point, you still have to consider and put time into some of the things you have to do over there, and you have to consider how the game is running and things like that, I believe. But with this, they've only for the last few years focused on this being on the latest consoles, so you're going to see the game play a little bit better. You're going to see the game look a little bit better than Madden because it's only been focused for those systems, and honestly, that's a really good thing. We're going to get a game here that is going to be maybe the best football game EA's ever released if it's on point, if there's no major issues. I don't see why this wouldn't be their best football game ever, but they have to nail everything. You know, they can't have bugs and have all those glitches that Madden has. You know, we can't just have that. Now, if you want to know more about some specific things that we saw in the trailer for this game that you might have missed, make sure to check out this video right here on the screen.